Hello, this is Christy with Little Roots Ranch, and today I'm going to be talking about some things that I learned in my 2021 garden. And I wrote them all down, and so that's how I will not forget any of them. I think no matter how long you've been gardening, farming, even if it's just containers, houseplants, anything you do, every year you learn a lot, and even if you adjust some things, like I know in past videos I've talked about that every year I give zucchinis more room, and every year I have a larger and larger plant. And so I haven't found, do you hear the turkey? I haven't found the perfect spacing just yet. I think I'm getting closer and closer, but at some point it'll be where it's too big and then I'll bring it back down. But anyways, so I compiled a list of things that I learned this year. So, first one, be better at pruning tomatoes faster. Yeah, I think this is an ongoing one for me, though I did better than last year, but it's so hard, in the early summer when everything's starting to grow and branch out and keeping on top of everything, and tomatoes seem so far away, or at least here in the Pacific Northwest. And so those little suckers just grow so fast. And if you have one or two tomato plants, then it's easier to stay on top of them. But I don't remember how many plants I had. I think I had 60 or 80, 60 to 80 plants, and I didn't do the best job. I did better than I have historically, but once they get going so big, and then I do that thing where there is a huge sucker that's got, it's flowers on it and stuff, and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to cut it. No, Christy, you need to cut it. So for next year, one of my goals is to continue to improve on that. The next thing is nylon trellises did not work. They did okay. I mean, for the price and the help, I definitely think it can't be beat. It was on Amazon. I think it was like $10 for like a 60-foot net. I think it was like 6x5 or 5x5 inch squares for the trellis. And I spaced T-posts, or actually U-posts, every 5 feet. And perhaps maybe if I had done better at pruning, I would have had better luck in general. But no, they were starting to I mean, they did do their job. Like, for the price, I definitely, and if it's your only alternative, I definitely think it can't be beat. But I was looking for something that was cheap and easy, because I knew that the following year, obviously with the greenhouse, I would use like the tomahawk things to trellis it from the roof. So I wasn't looking to build like a long-term, like permanent infrastructure, or like using like cattle panels or something like that. So they kind of worked, but they didn't work as well as I thought that they would work. So there's that. Then on a positive thing, I intercropped tomatoes and basil, and that worked fabulously, where I was able to keep up on the pruning of my tomatoes. In the back area, where it didn't get as much attention, the tomato plants were like growing out and falling down, and there was no like sign of life from the little basil plants trying to live underneath there. They gave it their all, but but overall, as long as I kept up on the tomatoes, it was really great. And it was convenient to have both of them together, because that's an excellent snack. The next thing was planting leeks deeper. I felt like I planted the leeks deep enough. I think I went I think it was like about 4 inches down, and I did the tunnels and then let them kind of fill in slowly. I also think when I transplanted my leeks, they were a little too small. But because I know you're looking for pencil width, and mine were just a hair under, but I thought it would be okay. But I didn't get as long of a white shank as I wanted. So perhaps instead, I also had rabbit problems. So I don't know if they pulled them out a little bit, because they definitely attack the leeks. But so leeks are still under construction for me. I really, really want that long white shank. Next is Trellis Cucumbers. Ugh. So I know I needed Trellis Cucumbers, and I was going to do it, and I had the nylon netting to do it. I didn't get around to it. And then I have 30-inch beds, 50 feet long, and 18-inch walkways, which are wood chips. And oh, those cucumbers, they took up like everything. You couldn't walk or breathe or anything. And they were so small for so long. And I'm like, oh, I've got time to get the trellis up. I've got time. Obviously, I always have a million other things going on. And like anything, when I'll get to it later, I didn't. And so then it was like, ugh, you know. So I didn't end up getting trellis, and they got too big. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to have to, you know, fill it out. And of course, what happens is when the first like light frost comes and all the leaves die, and I'm like, oh, there's 7 trillion cucumbers. So I did know that one, but it was still a fail for this year. And so next year I need to be more diligent about making sure I get that cucumber trellising. But also I should have my greenhouse. So I should be able to, but then I have to learn a whole new method. So stay tuned for that. The next thing was, oh, this one was fun. I did purple peas this year. First of all, they were amazing. I got them from Johnny's. I'll have to look up the exact brand, but they were amazing. And also they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. The best thing about them, so easy to pick. I can just look at a plant that's all green and see like they do pods of 2. And I can just see the purple pods hanging out. It made it so easy for harvesting or knowing, like seeing where everything's at and all of that. So I definitely, purple peas are here to stay. Brassicas transplant well. That's another thing that I learned. I kind of knew that anyways, but I didn't know to what extreme. So in the early spring garden, I really struggled with a bad batch of compost that I had, which was like 14 yards or whatever, and rabbits. Until clover came in, like the plant clover, I could not keep anything in the field. And I was just really struggling because my early transplants that I had set out that I started in soil blocks were just getting massacred. And so I was like, what am I gonna do? And so I decided, I was researching an old method of the hotbeds. And so I took like little wooden boxes, and I don't know, 2-inch spacing, planted a bunch of different brassicas and let them get a little bigger where they could fend for themselves a little bit, and then pulled out the bare root. And they weren't out of soil for like, do you hear the turkey? For more than 30 minutes, like probably like 10, 20 minutes on average. And I would take them out to my rows and put them in right away. And they did great. Like, you know, they're cucumbers, pumpkins, things like that, cucurbits, they don't transplant at all. They hate the roots touch, they hate whatever. But the brassicas, and by brassicas, for those who don't know, it's like your broccolis, your kales, your cauliflowers, cabbages, some Asian greens, things like that. They transplant really well and even bear root. And so that was a benefit that I found for protecting it from the Peter rabbits. I think I'm going to do a similar thing this coming year in the greenhouse though. And because it'll be warmer and more protected, and see if the wabbits can make it through here. So that's that. Then watering is a struggle for me. It's one of the key elements of growing on my scale, but not in my budget. I think it's my next big expense, but I don't have it right now. So it's me and hose, or me and sprinkler, or whatever it may be. And I definitely found that a challenge. Did you hear the turkey? I definitely found that as a challenge to make it through the entire garden. And keep up on it. And especially when I planted the pumpkins and they were kind of all like willy-nilly, and then I couldn't really get through there. And yeah, so I'm not out of my water problems just yet, because I'm not able to invest in irrigation just yet. So I'm going to be doing that, hand watering again. But what I found last year was I came up with a schedule and I watered every other day. So I watered Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, obviously assuming because it was really dry last summer. And then once over the weekend is what I was shooting for. It didn't always happen like that, but that's what I was shooting for. So that's that. Do a better job with less pumpkins. Yes. So actually I've got two things on pumpkins here. I've got also direct sown pumpkins are stronger and healthier. So that's one thing I want to try more, is to direct sow my pumpkins this year or next year. Yeah, next year. I had, because the pigs, and I give them pumpkins and stuff, so I had a bunch of volunteer plants, and those plants were so strong. They received 0 water because they weren't in like an irrigational way, and we already talked about the water woes. But they were so much stronger and produced more pumpkins. And then my transplanted ones, also I wasn't exactly ready for pumpkins, and so when I did transplant, I was focusing on doing quantity over quality, and realistically I would have been way better if I would have tried to transplant like a quarter of the pumpkins and had way better yields. I really struggled, and of course I told you about the water thing, because I kind of put them in, called it Pumpkin Acre, which is really cute. It was one of the old sheep paddocks, and just kind of put them all willy-nilly around there, but then I couldn't get the hose in there, or I'd step on, I don't know. A lot of lessons were learned on my dreams to becoming a beautiful tiny little pumpkin patch. So that's pumpkins, I guess 2-part. One is to make sure I can really give them the attention that they need and go for fewer, higher quality plants. And then also to direct sow. I am going to do some transplants because I'm still like working on that. I guess I'm not aware if like seeds rotted. Okay, the turkey. I'm not aware if seeds rotted in the ground or not, because like I said, I didn't plant them there. The pigs did, or chickens or turkeys or anything. So those are pumpkins. I need to learn how to manage cabbage, moth, and wireworm. Ugh. So what my farm garden, market garden, whatever, struggled with the most were the cabbage moths, which are those little white butterfly looking things that are not butterflies, they're moths. And they are monsters, especially to the brassicas, cabbage, right? And they would just land on all my leaves and lay their eggs, and then their little baby caterpillars would just eat everything and put holes in everything. And of course I don't use chemicals, so that's par for the course, but it seemed a little stronger this year. So I need to research like what I want to do or how I'm feeling and stuff like that. So I don't know if I don't know. I've heard that there's like traps and stuff, and I'm not sure if any of you guys have successfully managed the cabbage moths. Please let me know. Or the second part, which is wireworms. And I know that there's the beneficial nematodes that you can use to put in there for the wireworms. The wireworms for me, like I could not grow radishes to like save my life. I grew like a couple crops, but only because they were covered, like from the time I seeded to the time I harvested. But I had planted a bunch of successions of turnips and cabbages, or not cabbages, radishes, and what else am I missing? I had some Parisian carrots that went south, but basically the wireworms just get those little holes in them and just ruin them, and they really favor the radishes. So I need to figure out how to get a better handle on that using natural predators or whatever. Again, I don't use any of the sprays or anything like that, and I really value the biome in my soil, so I don't want to disrupt that. So that's something to work on. So if you have any tips for me, honestly, for the cabbage moth or the wireworms, please like put them below. I'd love to hear what worked for you. Yeah, let's see, what else do I have? Oh, less beet seeds per hole. So I do the multi-sow on a few things like green onions and beets, and on a lesser level, kohlrabi. But with the beets, I think I was doing 4 to 5 per hole, which I think is a little high. But not only that, is I wasn't thinking, I was just too busy. If I would have had my brain on, I would have caught it. But I wasn't thinking that just because for beets specifically, if you have one seed, that doesn't mean it will produce one plant. It can produce several. There's some fancy scientific word for that, but basically one seed can equal many. So I ended up with like 9 beets, and then I'm the worst at thinning, and because I feel like I'm murdering my beautiful plants, and I'm like, I'll just pick the big ones as they go, and then a lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda. But so that's one thing. I think I'm gonna try and do like maybe 2, maybe 3. I'm getting wild, I know. Beets seeds per hole, and then that way my beet should size up a little quicker and not be competing for, well, everything. So that was another lesson on the beets. Determinate tomatoes. So I experimented with determinate tomatoes, and as everyone knows, I'm Western Washington Zone 8B, and so we have a cooler growing season. And I think last year was crazy because we had a couple 100-degree days, but generally we can squeak by all summer without one 100-degree day and like only a few 90-degree days. And so our evenings are still cooler, and we just don't have the heat that the rest of the world, well, the rest of the Northern Hemisphere has in the summer. And so I played around with Oregon Spring tomatoes, and they are determinate, and they produce in cold weather. And so they said that they can be planted 2 weeks before frost, transplanted outside 2 weeks before frost. So I thought that was really exciting, and I went to do like a little experiment, and I started on like Instagram or whatever. But I had a windstorm that just attacked them, and I had them covered, but then I guess I didn't do it well. And so what ended up is over the night, it was like a pillow fight or blanket fight or whatever with the tomatoes, and they lost. And so in the morning I was like, oh. So I don't know, I'll try it again this year. So I don't know if they could actually be outside 2 weeks before the last frost. I know that they can't be in a pillow fight with the wind. So I learned that, but I did obviously succession transplant some more, and they did really well. They did really well. The flavor was great. Like, I really love those little Oregon Spring tomatoes. So I'm definitely gonna try again. And last year was my first year growing determinants. And I'm gonna try with a couple plants in the greenhouse and then some in the field. And I might experiment with other determinants. I don't know. I'm gonna kind of look at that and see. The plant stayed pretty reasonable and put up just a lot of tomatoes, and I don't know, I kind of dig it. But of course, the thing with determinants is, once they put up their fruit, that's it. But for me, it's not like I have a super long, well, maybe now with the greenhouse, but it's not like I have a super, super long growing season anyways. So there's that. Oh, and the last thing that I learned were my tomatillos. So I did not start my own sets this year. I received transplants from a neighbor, and but I was so bad. I was really overwhelmed this year, and I had left them in my car for like a week. And then they were like getting leggy, obviously, because there's not like a sun in my car. And then I wanted to remember, and I knew they needed some water, so I took them out of my car and put them down, and there was wind, and like they fell over. And then I found them in like another week, and I'm like, these guys are not gonna make it. Like, I am the biggest tomatillo abuser of all time. And so there was no way that I was gonna get like the trellis. They were all like wonky and like looked like a snake or something. And I was like, I don't know, I'm just gonna throw them in the ground, and whatever will be, will be. What I ended up having was like several plants from one, because it was laying on its side, and like all these ones started coming up, and they were like so amazing. And so I think I'm gonna try that again. Like, I can't mimic like the abuse, obviously. But what I can do is see if I can get them to grow a little longer, or grow them horizontal, or I don't know. I'll have to play with that, because obviously it was unintentional. And so, but yeah. So those are the lessons that I could think of from my 2020 garden. I had some big wins, and I guess I didn't talk too much about my wins, just the interplanting. I'll have to do another video for that. But mostly things that I've learned or things that I'm working on, because it's always, it's always a journey. Nobody becomes an expert gardener like in one day or 1 year or even 10 years, 20 years, I don't know. But if you have any questions about anything I said, go ahead and comment down below. Please comment about those cabbage, moth, and wire worms, because I definitely need help. Organic methods, of course. Yeah, I hope that you guys learned a lot. I definitely recommend reflecting on like wins and especially opportunities from your last garden, and so you can be have those top of mind when you go into next year, and do something a little different. Even if it's only a little improvement, it still matters, you know. And yeah, happy gardening, farming, and homesteading and all that stuff. Thank you. Bye.